Do Beverly Hills Cop, but the only way it could happen was if all of us were in.
40 years ago.
I felt like I had just slid in yesterday. A movie that, people grow up watching. You can figure out a way to connect the dots and bring those characters back. The audiences love it.
The year is 1984. A movie hits theaters that nobody at Paramount Pictures feels fully sure about. The script is a mess of revisions. Cast members are getting fresh pages while standing on set between takes. The director is chain-smoking, riding a wave of stress that would put a normal person in the hospital. And the lead actor, he was never the first choice. 40 years later, Beverly Hills Cop is more than a movie. It is a cultural monument. Quoted at every backyard barbecue by people who have seen it 14 times and will gladly make it 15. But here is what most fans never realized. The version of this film you fell in love with almost did not exist. What the cast has revealed over decades of interviews is a story far wilder than anything Axel Foley ever improvised. We are talking about a project that somehow survived two major star replacements. It faced a coin flip, a fruit bowl raid, a caffeine-fueled improv explosion, and a police chief walking into a scene holding a script he had not had time to read. Stay locked in. By the end of this video, you will look at Beverly Hills Cop in a completely new light. One specific reveal is going to send you straight back to rewatch a scene you have already seen 100 times, searching for what was hiding in plain sight. Let us get into it. Chapter 1. The movie that belonged to two other people first. Eddie Murphy was not the first choice. He was not even the second. Axel Foley was born in the mind of a man who never played him. The role was almost taken by a man who would have destroyed it. Instead, it went to a 23-year-old who turned him into a cinematic icon. The original choice was Mickey Rourke. The script he signed for barely resembles the film you know. It was a dark, violent action picture closer to Death Wish than a comedy. Rourke was paid $400,000 just to hold the role while the script sat in development. $400,000 not to film one scene, just to wait. Eventually, his deal expired, and Paramount had burned $500,000 on a ghost. Then came Plan B. And this plan is where things get genuinely alarming for anyone who loves this film. Sylvester Stallone signed on, actively tore up the script, stripped out the remaining comedy, and renamed the hero Axel Foley, a name that sounds more like a villain in a cheap airport thriller. He demanded massive explosions and ultra-violent set pieces that had Paramount executives doing panicked math on their napkins. 2 weeks before filming, Stallone walked away. He later recycled much of his draft into his 1986 film, Cobra, a movie nobody is quoting at parties. That film is anti-government cold, and there was no one to root for. With 2 weeks left, Paramount called Eddie Murphy. He stepped into a production still shaped by Stallone's grim, humorless vision. The script Murphy held was not funny. It was the exact opposite of everything he stood for as a performer. What happened next is a story the cast has been telling for 40 years. Chapter 2. What Eddie Murphy actually did on set and why nobody dared to stop him.
Martin Brest has described directing Murphy as less of a creative partnership and more of a controlled experiment where you point a camera at a force of nature and never call cut.
Murphy and Brest, knowing the script was fundamentally wrong for this lead actor,
made a move that could have gone completely sideways. They leaned into improvisation not just for a line or two, but for entire sequences.
The movie was being rebuilt in real time, while a full studio crew stood around waiting to see what Axel Foley would say next. Judge Reinhold has called it one of the most exhilarating and terrifying acting experiences of his entire career. Do you wish to file charges against this officer for assault?
Look where I am from. Cops do not file charges against other cops. You could not prepare for what Murphy was about to do. You could not rehearse your reaction to something that did not exist until he invented it. Your only job was to stay in the moment and not break.
Which sounds easy until you realize Murphy was actively trying to make you laugh, and every instinct in your body was screaming to lose it. In that famous Super Cop scene where Axel storms the Beverly Hills police station with a wild story about a secret task force,
most of what Murphy says was never in a script.
He was exhausted that day and rarely touched caffeine, but someone handed him a cup of coffee. He took a few sips. Whatever that little bit of caffeine did to his system, it hit like a light switch. He dumped the written dialogue, and started machine gunning words at a room full of actors who had no idea what was coming. Watch that scene again tonight. Keep your eyes on John Ashton as he physically pinches himself to avoid breaking character. Watch Judge Reinhold turn away jaw tight, fighting a laugh that could wreck the take. Two pros barely holding it together while a hyperactive 23-year-old improvised the scene around them.
They kept cameras rolling because stopping Eddie Murphy then would be like killing the best live show on set.
Chapter 3: The Audition That Turned Into a Scene. One of the most iconic comedy duos of the 80s was not cast the standard way. John Ashton and Judge Reinhold did not just walk into a Beverly Hills Cop audition reading lines.
Director Martin Brest pulled them into a room together and told them to talk about anything. No script, no sides. Just two actors and Brest watching for any real chemistry between them.
They started fighting a wild dispute about diet digestion and whether Rosewood was carrying 5 pounds of undigested steak. Ashton played the grumpy dad, totally contemptuous and dismissive.
Judge Reinhold went wide-eyed and indignant, certain he was making medical points Ashton was too dense to grasp.
They bickered like two people stuck in a hot car for 6 hours with no AC.
Brest loved that argument so much he scripted the stakeout scene from it, making them recreate the fight on camera.
That is why the stakeout sequence feels so raw and lived in. Two actors arguing about bowel movements in a room accidentally invented a comedy partnership for the ages. Chapter 4: The Man Who Stole the Movie Without Any Training at All. Bronson Pinchot came in for the art gallery clerk, a bit part with just a few lines. Basically set dressing. Just a simple greeting and asking for Jenny Summers.
But he walked in with an accent from a country that does not appear on any map vaguely European.
He delivered it with the calm confidence of someone who never once questioned if they sounded odd. By all accounts, Brest stopped the audition to rethink the entire scope of the role right there. Pinchot later shared that Serge came from a makeup artist he once knew. Someone with that condescending ease that makes you feel underdressed just by standing near them. He dialed that energy up until it was almost offensive, added the mystery accent, and arrived at Serge. Other roles were trimmed scenes moved around and dialogue cut. The movie reorganized itself around a character meant to be nothing, because he was too good to stay minor. Pinchot returned as Serge in the sequels because once a character that good exists, you do not retire him. Chapter 5: The Director Who Flipped a Coin.
Martin Brest had been fired from War Games before this project, so he lacked momentum.
He arrived with a bruised ego and real doubts about jumping into a high-pressure studio film that felt like it could collapse. Producers Don Simpson and Jerry Bruckheimer pursued him aggressively. Brest made his choice in a way no studio executive ever expects he pulled out a quarter. Heads he takes the job, tails he walks. It landed on heads, and he framed the coin on his wall. The production nearly broke him anyway. Every take was a battle between parody and a gritty thriller. New pages arrived so fast that actors were performing lines written less than an hour earlier. On one brutal day, Brest reportedly smoked 7 packs of cigarettes, that is 140, between action and cut. He still produced the highest-grossing film of 1984.
It beat Ghostbusters. It beat Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom.
It was the first R-rated movie to cross $200 million domestically. That record stood for 25 years. A coin flip and 7 packs of cigarettes bought cinema 4 decades of Axel Foley. Chapter 6: The Real Cop Who Never Needed an Acting Class. Gil Hill was an active Detroit homicide inspector when Martin Brest found him during location scouting. Brest walked into a police station for atmosphere and saw a man behind the desk who sounded so precisely like Inspector Todd, the perpetually annoyed boss who only tolerates Axel because he has to, that no casting director could have created him. Hill had 0 film credits and 0 training. He had decades of experience telling people what to do and watching them listen. In his real life, he wasn't just directing scene partners. The direction from Brest was simple, bordering on genius. Just be yourself. It worked perfectly. Hill returned for the sequels, and that was his only time in Hollywood. After the franchise, he ran for mayor of Detroit.
Most actors hunt for bigger roles. Gil Hill hunted for an entire city. Chapter 7: The Banana That Was Never Supposed to Exist.
The banana in the tailpipe is one of the most famous gags from that decade. Could I get some extra mayo? Certainly, sir. Thank you. And that banana, it was never in the script. The original scene called for potatoes. Dense, solid, and mechanically sound potatoes were the practical choice. Potatoes were also cinematically dull, and the universe agreed. The production was denied kitchen access at the Beverly Wilshire Hotel with no time to negotiate. So, the crew raided a fruit bowl in the hotel lobby, grabbed a handful of bananas and handed them to Eddie Murphy, as if it were the plan all along. The prop change the dialogue followed, and Murphy improvised the line about not falling for a banana in his tailpipe right on the spot. A lobby fruit bowl gave Beverly Hills Cop an iconic moment. A practical problem became the perfect creative solution lasting 40 years. Chapter 8. The city that was never meant to be Detroit. Here's a piece of origin history that even diehard fans rarely know. Axel Foley wasn't originally from Detroit. The first draft from 1981 titled Beverly Drive featured a Pittsburgh cop. And the name was not Axel Foley. It was Axel Ellie. Axel Ellie, the name of someone who sends handwritten thank you notes and worries about minor plumbing issues. It shares almost no DNA with the Foley, who talked his way into restricted rooms and out of situations that should have ended his career. The premise kept the same skeleton. A blue-collar cop investigates a murder in Beverly Hills. Culture clash ensues, but the tone was totally different. It was gritty, humorless, and played completely straight. Over a decade of rewrites, including a version by Stallone that almost turned it into something unrecognizable, the character finally evolved. Pittsburgh became Detroit. Ellie became Foley. A straight revenge thriller shifted into something looser, funnier, and infinitely more rewatchable. The transformation was neither clean nor deliberate. It was born from chaos, compromise, and split-second decisions made under pressure by a team figuring out the movie as they went. The Axel Foley fans fell for is not the character originally written. He is the character who survived everything that tried to make him lesser. Chapter 9. 3 people claimed they invented Axel Foley, and they all sound certain. Someone in Hollywood created Beverly Hills Cop. The question of who is far more complicated than it has any right to be, as 3 different people claimed credit with total conviction. Claim number 1. Paramount president Michael Eisner said the idea hit him in 1975 after being pulled over in a battered station wagon. The officer was polished, refined Beverly Hills to the bone. Eisner walked away convinced that the collision between grit and wealth was movie gold. Claim number 2. Producer Don Simpson, half of the legendary Simpson-Bruckheimer team, said he developed the concept in 1977. The duo produced office hits like Beverly Hills Cop, its sequel, and Top Gun. A streetwise cop dropped into the insulated bubble of Beverly Hills. He was very specific about the year, the idea, and his ownership of it. Claim number 3. Former undercover officer Lynn Franklin believed the film borrowed from his 1976 memoir, Sword of Justice. Franklin alleged that screenwriter Daniel Petrie Jr. had access to his book long before the script existed. He considered legal action, so the final count stands at 1 studio president with a speeding ticket, 1 mega producer with an ego matching his vision, and 1 actual cop with a manuscript and a theory about where Hollywood did its homework. All 3 were certain the character came from them. What the cast says about this mess tells you everything. When the origin story is up for debate, the production was likely just as chaotic. This was never a film with one clear, singular vision. It was a movie built from conflicting ideas, rescued from the brink of collapse and shaped by constant improvisation. That it actually turned into a classic is a miracle, or maybe some films are just meant to exist. Chapter 10. The TV show that got killed by Murphy's own standards. Back in 2013, someone at CBS decided Beverly Hills Cop needed to be a network procedural. You have to wonder what they even thought the movie was about. But let us track the fallout. CBS ordered a pilot featuring Aaron Foley, Axel's son, working as a detective in modern-day Beverly Hills. Barry Sonnenfeld signed on to direct. He directed Men in Black, so the project had serious pedigree. Plus, Eddie Murphy was not just slapping his name on a press release. He showed up for the pilot guest starring as Axel Foley and signing on as an executive producer. A massive franchise, a real creative team, and Murphy himself. The pilot went to test screenings. This is where it gets interesting. Test audiences loved Murphy so much that CBS demanded he return for a recurring role. They wanted him back every few episodes. Be the legacy anchor, give the show the Axel Foley seal of approval on a regular schedule. Murphy said no. He had no interest in returning to television for the long haul. And he certainly was not going to spend his career playing second fiddle in his own franchise on a network schedule. He created Axel Foley, being a sidekick to his own son, competing for time slots against shows like NCIS. That was never the plan. Without Murphy on board for the long run, CBS lost interest fast. Director Sonnenfeld later hinted at corporate power plays between CBS and Paramount, the kind of executive chess matches that ignore the story entirely and focus only on who holds the leash that likely killed the project. The pilot was shelved. The TV version never aired, and 10 years later, Murphy returned to the character in Beverly Hills Cop. Axel F. on Netflix, done on his own terms in a format he wanted. 40 years after the original, he remained the only person who could decide what happened to Axel Foley. Chapter 11. The sweatshirt that accidentally sparked a fashion craze. The Mumford High School sweatshirt Axel Foley wears throughout the movie was not some planned product placement, not a branding deal. It was not a calculated choice to move merchandise or define his character through fashion. The costume department just needed Axel to look like he came from a real place. They wanted authenticity, a wardrobe that told the truth about his life before he hit Beverly Hills, before the high-end restaurants and the polished police stations. Mumford High was a real Detroit public school. The sweatshirt was just standard school gear. Someone pulled it because it looked right, tossed it on the biggest star in America, and never thought about it again. Then the movie became the biggest film of 1984. Mumford High was buried under thousands of mail orders. Fans from California to Texas, people who had never been anywhere near Michigan, were begging to own the sweatshirt Axel Foley wore. A public school gym uniform suddenly became the most wanted item in the country. The school was totally overwhelmed. Cheap knockoffs flooded the streets. Official replicas came next. Decades later, you can still buy licensed versions online. A throwaway costume choice made for the sake of realism has generated sales and pop culture fame for over 40 years. You can still buy the shirt today. Mumford High, though, closed its doors in 2017. Chapter 12. The soundtrack that took over a decade. The Beverly Hills Cop soundtrack did not just back the film. It took over the entire year of 1984 and left a mark on the decade that is still there. The centerpiece was a track that had no business becoming a pop hit by any standard rule. Axel F. by composer Harold Faltermeyer was a pure instrumental. No words, no singer.
No chorus to hook you. In 1984, instrumentals did not chart, certainly not high.
Pop radio demanded vocals, a story, something the audience could sing along with.
Axel F. peaked at number 3 on the Billboard Hot 100. It wedged itself between power ballads and rock anthems, and simply refused to budge because the entire country was already humming it.
There was nothing anyone could do. That electric keyboard riff landed on the same charts as Bruce Springsteen and Prince, and stayed there through pure, undeniable catchiness.
You know the melody. You are almost certainly hearing it in your head right now.
That is the point. But the rest of the album hit just as hard. Glenn Frey's The Heat Is On peaked at number 2 and became the unofficial anthem of every high-speed 80s montage ever committed to film. Neutron Dance by the Pointer Sisters cracked the top 10, synced to the opening truck chase with a kinetic energy that grabs an audience instantly and refuses to let go. New Attitude by Patti LaBelle reached the top 20 and gave LaBelle one of the biggest hits of her entire career. 4 songs, 4 charting singles, all from the same movie.
Most film soundtracks are lucky if they can produce even one memorable track. Beverly Hills Cop delivered 4 hits and a sonic identity so distinct that the opening bars of Axel F. still act as an immediate cultural signal 40 years later.
You hear those first 3 notes and you know exactly where you are. Evidence is hiding in the final cut that director Martin Brest left there on purpose. Now, we get to the detail that changes how you watch the film. Beverly Hills Cop was being rewritten during production at a pace that would have forced most films to shut down and reassess. Did you know that actors Eddie Murphy, John Ashton, and Judge Reinhold improvised most of their lines in the 1984 hit Beverly Hills Cop revise pages were handed to actors between setups. Dialogue was swapped out minutes before cameras rolled. The script was a living document, and it was moving fast. In one scene, all of that chaos is permanently visible if you know where to look. When Chief Hubbard storms into the Beverly Hills Police Department to confront Axel and the detectives, pay close attention to what actor Stephen Elliott is carrying. Those rolled up papers he holds throughout the scene. The ones that look like police reports.
Those are actually his script pages. These were official documents a busy chief would naturally carry, but in reality, they were his lines.
Elliot received revised dialogue so close to the shooting of that scene that he had no time to memorize the words. Rather than stalling production, or asking for more time, or demanding more rehearsal.
More of anything, really. He just grabbed the pages and rolled them up to look like something that belonged in a police chief's hand.
He walked onto the set and performed the scene while holding a screenplay that was still being rewritten, while the movie around it was being filmed.
Martin Brest saw it. He knew exactly what those papers were.
He left it in the final cut, and Elliot was not alone in that sequence.
Ronnie Cox, who played Lieutenant Bogomil, was reportedly delivering lines in that same scene that were only 30 minutes old. The ink was basically still wet.
Most productions rehearsed for weeks. Beverly Hills Cop was handing actors warm pages, pointing them toward a lens, and trusting that the performers were skilled enough to make it work. They were, and now you know what to look for. Here is the truth about Beverly Hills Cop that all these cast revelations add up to. This movie should not exist. Not in the form you love, not with the performances you remember, not with the lines that are still being quoted 40 years later. It should have been a Mickey Rourke action vehicle that got stuck in development limbo, or a Sylvester Stallone ultra-violent revenge thriller that nobody would be rewatching, or even a network procedural about the son of Axel Foley. It could have been a competent but forgettable studio picture made from a finished,
rehearsed, properly sourced script featuring potatoes instead of bananas, and an art gallery clerk who said 3 lines and disappeared.
Instead, a coin flip hired a director. A caffeinated afternoon produced a legendary improv scene, and a hotel lobby fruit bowl replaced a root vegetable to create a catchphrase. A real homicide inspector brought more authenticity to a Hollywood role than most trained actors ever manage. A makeup artist's condescending mannerisms became a beloved character who lasted 4 decades. And a decorative sweatshirt from a Detroit public school accidentally became the most famous piece of athletic gear in the country. What the cast of Beverly Hills Cop has revealed across 40 years of interviews, accounts, and
behind-the-scenes stories is that the version of this movie you fell in love with was assembled from improvisation, emergency decisions, pure luck, and raw talent.
Go back and watch it tonight.
Watch Ashton pinch himself. Watch Reinhold fight the laugh. Watch the chief hold his script like it is a police report.
Listen to the Axel F theme and think about that instrumental track which had no business being a top 3 pop hit but became one anyway. Picture that coin flip. Think about those bananas tucked away. If these hidden details about Beverly Hills Cop changed how you see the movie, leave a thumbs up. Tell us in the comments which of these cast secrets caught you off guard and pass this along to a fellow fan. They really should see what was right there in plain sight. Axel Foley would have smooth talked his way out of a request like this.
But you do not have to.